hear about the 20 skins on Overwatch? The bundle? No, in all seriousness, I just heard from Gold that something's happening with Overwatch. But we're not going to talk about that today. Apparently, yesterday there's like the main thing that Overwatch is supposed to do is not happening. We can talk about that later. If you guys know about that, let me know. Because I don't know about that. Today, I did promise we're going to talk about how to deal with emotionally manipulative people. By the way, if you haven't already done so, please check out our memberships. Oh, hi, say hi in the chat. And happy Friday for those of you in Asia. Almost TGIF in the US. But I wanted to talk about how to deal with emotionally manipulative people. And this, I guess, kind of relates to the thing that Overwatch is supposed to do, but it isn't happening. Do any of you play Overwatch? Anyways, so you want to become a member here? Please do check out our memberships. We got 4 tiers. You get access to loyalty badges, custom emojis, lots of goody stuff, which you can read about. And right now, though, maybe for like the next half hour, just because I finally feel better with my cough, and it's not as bad as it was yesterday or the day before, or even the past like 3 weeks. But I believe I've had a cold for like 3 weeks. Let's see here. No, wait, maybe. Oh, yeah, it's been 3 weeks. I've had a cold for 3 weeks. That's effed up. Anyways, I do want to talk to you guys about how to deal with emotionally manipulative people.
We're going to talk about how to deal with people who are emotionally manipulative.
Say hi in the
chat. And this is like such a big problem because there are some people out there who, if you are in a relationship with them, always make things your fault. Right? Like even when you criticize them or you're kind of like trying to tell them to, hey, stop doing this. You really need to be doing better. If you say anything to them, like any kind of conflict or even remotely thing that's close to conflict,
they get super
somehow
defensive.
Becomes your fault. So they engage in particular behaviors or like evoke certain feelings in you where they kind of make you feel like crap. And then you're in this weird sort of situation where like every moment that goes by or every day that goes by, they're kind of sitting there and you're feeling like worse and worse and worse. And then you even see that they're doing this to you. You see that like, hey, I'm feeling manipulated. I'm being put into a corner, but you can't like deal with it, right? So the guilt builds up or you feel like more and more of an asshole. And eventually you kind of give in. And then there's some degree of harmony for some amount of time. But inside you, there's like some amount of resentment building up too, right? Because you were trying to tell them like, hey, this problem in this relationship that we're having, like you're somewhat responsible for it too. But if you ever open that door with them, the emotional manipulation begins again. So they'll engage in particular behaviors or like make you feel a particular way. And then it's almost like they're like bludgeoning you or bullying you using your own emotions.
Girls do this all the time.
And so you feel out of control and you feel powerless and you feel frustrated. But this is the kind of tricky thing is like, even if you ever try to set a boundary with them, they make you feel like an asshole.
Yep.
And if advocating for yourself in a relationship makes you feel like an asshole or a piece of shit, that is a problem. And today we're going to teach you a little bit about how to deal with that situation, how to understand that situation, how to understand yourself, how to understand them, and literally what to say to sort of level that playing field and help them take responsibility. If you're in a situation like this, you really encourage that person to seek at least a mental health evaluation. Because a lot of these things, it's not that this person is bad, it's that the way that they learned how to relate to their own emotions may be indicative of some kind of traumatic experience in childhood where a therapist could really help them. On the flip side, if you're in one of these situations, you can absolutely get therapy as well to sort of help you manage the stress. But this is sort of why we designed a coaching program to sort of help people understand these kinds of principles.
And understand
as
the
you
skills.
go through life, what is it that controls your behavior? What are the things in your life that like you know are wrong, but you can't really fix because there's something internal that gets in the way? So if you really want insight into like, okay, why do I procrastinate, or why do I end up in these situations over and over and over again? Or how do I better understand this balance of, okay, this is what's an appropriate emotion and this is what's inappropriate, and how can I balance those things to move in the right direction? Then definitely check out coaching.
Yeah, and there's also, I mean, there are so many men and women who do this with their partners, threaten to leave their relationship, always making each other feel bad. It's awful.
Who are you? This is what's inappropriate, and how can I balance those things to move in the right direction? Then definitely check out coaching. So let's start with this. Who are you? You are a good person. You are someone who does not like to feel negative emotion, and you are someone who, when you feel bad about something, you tend to try to do things to fix it.
We try to fix the problem.
This is what it usually takes to develop a relationship with someone who emotionally manipulates you, right? You have to be like, when you feel guilty or ashamed or angry or something like that, you need to deal with those negative emotions by fixing something in the situation. So if I'm feeling guilty, I can't just sit and feel guilty. I'm not like an asshole who can just be like, screw you, right?
They can overly apologize.
Me. I can't be a sociopath. So I have to be like, when I feel negative emotions, I have to do something to fix those negative emotions, which means chances are you are a decent human being. Now let's talk about the person that you're in the relationship with. Now this person is not necessarily a bad human being by any means, and I've worked with a lot of people who are very emotionally manipulative, who have like psychiatric diagnoses, and so we'll talk about that in a second. But the most common thing for the person who is emotionally manipulative is a history of trauma. So they may have a diagnosis, may not have a diagnosis. We're talking about things like CPTSD, we're talking about BPD, we're talking about growing up with parents who are narcissistic or abusive. So chances are the person that you're in the relationship with has some degree of trauma. The other thing that we really have to consider is that the way that they manage their emotions is by offloading them onto another human being. So let's take a look at how that works, okay?
This is particularly dominant with anxious people.
Here's the person you're in the relationship with. And when you're in a relationship with someone, sometimes something happens. There's some kind of conflict or whatever. It doesn't really matter what it is.
It doesn't matter what the conflict is.
This person starts to feel some amount of negative emotion. And so as their negative emotion starts to build up,
it like bubbles over.
In which they process or deal with that negative emotion. Now, this is the key thing to understand about trauma. When we have a history of trauma in our lives, or even, it's not like you have to be, assaulted in some way or something like that. It can also be like in a neglectful household. The key thing here is these are people who, when they were growing up, did not learn how to manage their emotions in a healthy way.
People didn't know how to manage their emotions in a healthy way.
This means as their negative emotions
and so as the negative emotions
what a healthy human being would do is they'd start to like manage these emotions through stuff like meditation or therapy, or going for exercise, or maybe having a spa day, like going out with friends, and then like sort of offloading those emotions in sort of a healthy way, maybe playing volleyball or video games or whatever. But that's not what these people do. What do these people do? They transfer their emotions to you. So as they start to feel bad, they engage in certain kinds of behaviors, or they use words or something like that, that then makes you start to feel bad, right? And so like a good example of this is like, let's say you're dating someone and you'll get into an argument and you're pissed off at them because whatever. You guys get into some kind of argument.
They get into some argument,
or it doesn't matter. Where they just like start crying, right? And they don't like talk to you. They just start crying. They start to feel bad. Their negative emotions start to rise, and then they don't say anything to you, or they'll say like, I wish that you understood me, or I wish you would listen, or like, I just feel so unloved right now, or like, they'll just say like some random crap. Like, they don't even necessarily accuse you. In some situations, it is absolutely like an accusation. We'll get to those in a second. But as this negative emotion starts to build up, like they start transferring it over to you, right? They're like some kind of, I don't know, like some
transfer all this negative
reverse
shit.
energy vampire kind of thing, where instead of like sucking your negative emotion away, they're like transferring negative emotion to you. It's like some kind of umbilical cord, where then what happens is as you start to feel guilty, right? Then this guilty becomes unmanageable. And like, why is, and this also kind of explains
the guilt and the shame becomes
why, so
unmanageable.
So why, like,
Ay, ay, ay.
every scenario ends up like this? It's because even if both of y'all are fighting, there's this umbilical cord where they are transferring their negative emotion to you, which explains why no matter what the conflict is, you always end up feeling like crap, and they're like kind of okay with it. Do y'all get that? Like, there are these scenarios where both of y'all are fighting, but something is happening where, like, the longer the fight goes, the more stable they seem to get, and the more unstable you're getting. And that's because there's this emotional transfer of energy. They'll engage in particular behaviors. They'll say certain things that make you feel worse and worse and worse. And now here's the key thing. So, since you are someone
this emotional transfer of
things,
energy,
right? So you manage that emotion through healthy behaviors. You don't just transfer it to someone else. Usually what you end up doing is this emotion gets so much to bear because not only is it like your own intrinsic guilt, which is maybe like
you have an intrinsic guilt, right? Even though you don't want to say that you feel guilty.
But then there's the transferred guilt as well. So that what this sort of means is that you, like, they'll kind of like, it's almost like a game of chicken.
You've got
where
transferred
you
guilt.
will experience more negative emotion in the relationship before they do. And then eventually it'll be too much for you, and then you'll cave, right? They're sitting there crying. You feel like such an asshole. So then eventually you're like,
yeah, you feel like an
I'm
asshole
sorry,
for them
fine.
crying.
And then like you do something like you get flowers, or like you make them a nice meal, or you apologize, or you tell them that you love them. And then what you have to do is take these negative emotions and you got to bottle them up. They get to keep crying, but you don't get to keep crying, right? Or in a situation of like anger, right? If you're with someone who's like emotionally manipulative and is like angry at you,
or avoidant,
you don't get to feel angry with them, right? You just have to take it, and you have to say, yeah, you're right. Or you have to cave and be nice to them, or something like that.
You cave,
like,
you be nice to them, you tell them you love them, you have to be
having to take this crap, and you have to manage it. You have to change
all their
behavior,
crap.
you have to appease them in some way, and then you feel terrible about it.
And then you gotta appease
So
them.
what do we do about this
and
situation?
Placate them.
Okay. So a couple of things
So
to
what do we
understand.
do?
The first is what we need to do to fix the situation fundamentally is we've got to stop this like transfer of emotion
Stop
from them to
transferring
you.
the energy
You need to be able to
from them to you. Equalize the responsibility of fixing the problem in the relationship.
Okay? So how are we going to do that? So the first thing that we're going to do is vocalize our own emotions. And then instead of us fixing the problem, we are going to try to encourage them to fix it with us. And I'll give you all an example of what that means. Let's say that I get into an argument and then my partner just starts crying, right? And then I feel guilty and they're like, oh, I can't believe you don't understand me. And then like they're not like proactive about trying to fix it. Y'all get that? They're just expressing a lot of emotion and kind of transferring it to you. And it's sort of your responsibility to figure out how to make this better. That's what's so frustrating about emotional manipulation. So instead of what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, I can see that you're upset. I'm feeling upset as well.
How can we fix this together?
What do you think we can do to fix this? And this is where they're going to come back with all kinds of other crap that will be emotionally damaging because they don't want to accept responsibility. Why do they need to accept responsibility? Because thus far in the relationship, they've been feeling like crap, and they just transfer that crap to you. I'm going to ship you all of my emotional crap, and then you're going to pay off that debt. I haven't needed to fix it so far. And that also is sort of not their fault because they probably grew up in a situation where that is exactly what happened to them. So that's the rules of the game as they learn them. They haven't learned how to do like shared decision making or shared problem solving.
And they don't know how to problem
So instead of what you're going to say is you're going to say, hey, I can see that you're really upset. I'm feeling really upset too. You vocalize your emotions.
Vocalize
and then you
the
can
emotion.
say,
don't try to
what do you
fix the
think
problem
we can do to sort of move forward from here? So what you're going to kind of do is dump it in their lap. You're going to say, what can we do?
Dump it right back in their lap.
And this is where what you're going to see is an emotional escalation. It's not their problem. It's your problem. So they're going to say, I can't believe you don't understand me. I've tried to explain. If you don't know, this is one of my favorites. If you don't know what's wrong, I don't know how to explain it to you. Right? They'll use phrases like that, which is like, that's so frustrating because like, you know, And so they're going to say things like that. And then what you're going to do is you're going to repeat back to them. You don't want to get emotional. You want to say,
repeat back what you
I'm
heard.
hearing you say that, you expect me to understand what is going on in your head and in your mind, and you expect me to know these things. I'm sorry, I don't. Are you able to communicate that to me? And if they say, they're not going to be able to answer that question. They're going to dodge. So be prepared for the emotional manipulation. They're going to say, look, if you don't know what's wrong, I don't know how to say it. And then it's like, what you're going to do is just pause for a second, okay? So some of this is internal. You don't even have to say it. Notice that, hey, they're expecting you to know what's going on with them, but they're the ones who are living it, and they can't even articulate it. So why on earth are they expecting you to know what's going on with them if they're the ones that have 100% info and they can't articulate
and they don't communicate?
So then what you're going to do is you're going to say, hey, until you're able to articulate this, I'm sorry, I'm not telepathic. I think in order to fix this problem, I'm going to need your help. If you're not able to articulate what's wrong, I think I need to take a step back from this. If at some point you're willing to have a conversation about it, please let me know. And then we're going to step back. Then they're going to start crying over and over and over again. And that's when, even if they cry, if you leave the room, right, what's going to happen? They're going to start crying louder. This asshole, he's leaving the room and I'm crying. I'm going to show him. I'm going to start crying. I'm going to start, There'll be
or they might want to leave the relationship
right?
and threaten to leave.
So that's where you can say, hey, I can see that you're getting more and more upset. I don't know how to engage with you unless you're able to articulate what the problems are. I'm sorry you're feeling upset. I'm feeling really frustrated as well. When you've calmed down, if you're able to engage, I really hope you're able to. But the key thing that must happen, must happen, is they must take responsibility for some of their own emotions and the problem solving in the relationship. The key thing for you to understand is that they are going to make you feel guilty. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that guilt that we feel and we're going to pass half of it back to them. We're not going to say all kinds of negative things to them. That doesn't really work well, right? We're not going to say, you don't love me and you do this and you do this. We're not going to do that. We're going to say, hey, I need your help to fix this problem. Are you going to be my partner in this? That's the general approach. And they can emotionally escalate as much as they want to. And then what you are going to say, you're going to articulate this to them and articulate this to yourself. I cannot fix this relationship by myself. There's no way. You've been trying, right? You've been trying to manage their emotions and your own. But if this is a relationship, they've got to be participants. And so as you tell yourself that, just say, hey, this is what it's going to take to fix the relationship. I'm going to need their help. You can articulate some of that to them, but you don't have to share all that. But that's how you manage your own emotions.
This is where you get brave and courageous.
Notice this pattern. Recognize that a lot of what you're feeling is actually being offloaded by them and is not yours to fix. Because the other thing that happens...
not your problem to fix.
...is that when these situations arise, you're left guessing how to fix it. They don't even articulate what they want you to do. So you're just left feeling guilty, and then you're trying to play darts with a blindfold, and you're trying to hit the bullseye, and you don't even know what they want. Right? And so then you're jumping through 1,000 hoops, whereas if they took some responsibility to tell you, hey, here's what I need to feel better, then it would be so much less effort for you. But you're left spinning your wheels and blind and stuff like that. You don't know how to fix it. But you keep trying and you keep trying and you keep trying because you feel guilty, you feel guilty, you feel guilty. And then what ends up happening is oftentimes we'll get so frustrated that we just have to break up with them or something like that. And then that creates a whole other thing where they start to, escalate even further. And because anytime they feel negative emotion, what are they going to do? They're going to use that emotional umbilical cord to dump it back on you. Just recognize all of this stuff that's going on.
So icky.
And if you want to engage in a relationship with this person, which I know that the internet will say, this person is emotionally manipulative, break up with them. The truth of the matter is that half the human beings on the planet are in relationships with people who are emotionally manipulative in some way, right? I don't even have statistics about that. That's just my gut, okay? The key thing, though, is that a lot of times we don't want to break up with this person. Because this person isn't a bad human being. They just don't know how to articulate their emotions. They don't know how to accept responsibility for their emotions. They don't know how to be a partner in a relationship.
Yeah.
So what we actually need to do is, if you want to try to maintain some kind of relationship with them, is use this technique, right? First of all, recognize the emotional transfer and then acknowledge their emotions. And then what we're going to do is, instead of us being omniscient, we're going to admit our failures. And we're going to ask for help.
Take accountability.
Hey, I need your help.
If we're going to fix this
figure out how to move forward from here. how are
How
we
do
going to fix
we
this? So you want to
move
use like
forward?
first person
Like the
plural
critical
language.
question to
And
ask
they're going
in
to come
any
back with all this kind of
relationship that
crap,
you're
and they're going to
having
say, oh, if you
difficulty
don't
with.
know, then I don't know how to tell you. And you can say, yeah, that's really hard for me when I'm in a relationship. You just want to state what's happening.
State the facts,
I'm
state what's
in a
happening,
relationship with
tell
someone
them
who's
how you
not
feel.
able to articulate what they think is wrong. I don't know how to fix that relationship. Period. I can't fix relationships in which my partner can't articulate what's wrong. Period.
Period.
And then they'll start crying
Point
a lot.
blank,
And then you can say, like,
period.
okay, I can see that I'm telling you I need help and I'm not getting the help. I'm not getting any communication. I'm going to step away from this situation. And then what you need to do is like step away from a sensory standpoint. You can say, hey, I'm going to like step outside. I love you very much. I just can't function in this kind of situation
Anymore.
If at some point you're able to participate in a conversation, great. I'm more than happy to have it. I don't see I can't fix this without you. Love you, and then you peace out.
Yeah.
Right? You step away.
Isn't that so sad? If they're not willing to do the work.
So if y'all are listening to this, you may start to think, well, I don't think this would actually work with the relationship that I'm in. The emotional manipulation is so strong that this kind of limit setting may not be successful. And so what we're going to do is give y'all a sort of easier option that moves things in the right direction. So the core of the problem right now is that when your partner or the person you're in the relationship with, parent, child, whatever, friend, when they start to feel negative emotions, they displace those emotions on you.
And they transfer
your
those
negative
emotions onto
pile
you.
up, and then you end up giving in some way.
You give in
That's
some
why
way.
we use the phrase emotional manipulation.
You
because
apologize, you
they're changing your
placate,
behavior.
they're changing
but
your
it feels like
behavior.
you're kind of being pushed into a corner, and these emotions
If
like
your back's
guilt,
into a
or maybe
corner,
they're crying or they're sad or whatever. They're
you
engaging
feel
in
so
certain
guilty
ways where they're like forcing
and
your
responsible for their feelings.
And so this is the other really
So they
tricky thing
force
is that
you
a
to,
lot of
like,
times what we may
lose
sort of
yourself.
think is, okay, if they're forcing you into a behavior, just don't do it, right? Use willpower and resist. Just resist. Set limits, set boundaries. But the whole point is that we can't do that. If we were able to resist our emotions, use willpower and resist. Just resist. Set limits,
Like,
set boundaries.
if you're trying to set boundaries,
we can't do
you
that.
can't really do that. And
If
most
we were
people
able
don't.
to
They just
resist
say
our
sorry.
emotions, then we wouldn't be in this situation in the first place. So instead, what we're going to do is teach y'all a slightly different technique to change the dynamic of the relationship. So the core of the problem here is that
Because what he's saying is if you can't do, like if you don't think you can do this, if you don't think you can ask for help, if you don't think you can vocalize your, first of all, acknowledge that they're transferring some negative energy onto you, their emotions, their trauma dumping. You can acknowledge that they're transferring it and then give half of that guilt back to them. Vocalize your own emotions and ask for help. Say that you need help in figuring out together how to move forward. And if they can't do that, then this is what you can do. If you don't think like this is the kind of conversation that you can have with them because for whatever reason they can't quite articulate how they feel or they just like don't know what to do. Like they're just telling you how they feel but they don't have a way forward. Here's what you can do. By the way, say hi in the chat and don't forget to check out our memberships, engage in the super chat.
You're engaging in behaviors in the relationship without kind of getting credit for it, right? And if you really think about it, they're not really asking you what they want. They start crying and then you feel guilty and then you're left playing this kind of guessing game to try to fulfill their wants. And even when you do something positive in the relationship, it doesn't feel like a win, right? It still feels like a loss. Even if you do something to help them stop crying or demonstrate your love or provide emotional support, you feel like you were kind of forced into it instead of them like asking you for something and you kind of like doing your fair share. So the tricky thing about this is that even when you do that kind of stuff, it's reinforcing the behavior of emotional manipulation. Because now when they express emotions and then make you feel guilty and then you do the quote unquote right thing, what are you actually reinforcing in the relationship? You're reinforcing them to emotionally manipulate you more.
Because they know it works.
This is how they get their needs met. And this is what's so infuriating for so many people is they don't realize, like, how do I get in this situation? Why does this keep happening? It's because you're reinforcing the behavior.
You're giving in.
Emotionally manipulating you gets you to do what they want, they're going to keep doing it. So instead what we need to do is if you can't set a boundary or resist, then what we need to do is change the way that they get their needs met. And what we're going to focus on is having them articulate what they want.
You've got
so
to
the key thing is it's not that
get
you
them
don't have to
to
do
articulate.
it. You need to break up with
I mean,
them or any
it's
of that
a
stuff.
must.
You know, if you want to do that, that's your choice. But a lot of people want to try to make these relationships work. And if you want to do that, the key thing is instead of reinforcing their emotional manipulation, reinforce their articulation. So this is where as they start crying, for example, you don't want to give in to the crying, but you can say, hey, I see that you're really hurt. Can you help me understand what you need in this moment to help you feel better? Can you please let me know what you think I've done wrong? Or, you know, what can I do? It hurts me so much. So own that emotion to see you cry. I'm really worried about you. Please let me know what I can do to help. So there's something really tricky there. You're not really giving in per se, but you're also not saying, hey, like, I'm not going to help you. And like, this is your emotions and you need to handle it. So you want to be emotionally supportive, but this is the key thing. You're not going to do anything until they ask for it. Because what really weighs on people, what really burns people out in emotionally manipulative relationships is that they're left guessing all the time. The other person doesn't even ask you to do anything. They just sort of force you into doing stuff. And so instead what we want to do is you say, hey, can you please let me know what I can do to help you feel better? And then if they articulate it, you can provide it, right? Presuming it's an appropriate kind of response. And that's really important because what we want to do is shift their behavior. We want to sort of encourage them to actually articulate what they want, and then we can do it for them. The more that you're able to do that, it's going to change the dynamic of your relationship. So now instead of, hopefully, emotionally manipulating you, as you do this more and more, they're able to actually articulate, hey,
and then they're able to give you what you need and want.
And hurt, and I really manipulating you. As you do this more and more, they're able to actually articulate, hey, what you did the other day made me feel neglected and hurt, and I really feel like you should have spent more time with me. I think you should have done this. I think you should have done this. And then that's when you can say, okay, thank you for letting me know how you feel. And now instead of making you feel guilty, they're communicating with you. That still may make you feel guilty, and they may ask you to do things that are a little bit unreasonable, but it's a step in the right direction. So if you're not able to like kind of take a step back and walk away from the conversation, if your emotions get the better of you, this is a technique that can actually work a little bit better. So the tricky thing about being in a relationship with an emotionally manipulative person, and this is the key problem, is that they will like evoke emotions in you, and then you are left managing those emotions and trying to fix the problem. Even if you try to criticize them, or you like sort of ask for their help, or you point out to them things that they're doing wrong, they will somehow activate their emotional circuitry, turn on your emotional circuitry, and make their faults your problem to fix. And this is an unsustainable relationship, and it's incredibly frustrating.
Unsustainable. It's so unsustainable, especially if people are like jealous. They're so, or like insecure. They make you feel insecure, and it's not even like, it's their insecurities, but they want you to fix it. Because if they're getting their needs met, if you are giving them what are the love languages, it's time, quality time, words of affirmation, gift giving, acts of service, physical touch. Like if they are actually getting those from you, well, then what's missing? And if they can't articulate that, that's not your problem to fix. They're just passing their insecurities on to you.
Have this vulnerability, right? Because they've learned and this is an unsustainable relationship, and it's incredibly frustrating.
It's so frustrating when I see people in this.
Right? Because they've learned some really interesting technique.
You're very emotional. They have this vulnerability.
Like emotion.
They have this technique that they use. It's like classic emotional manipulation.
Offloading.
Emotional
so the more
offloading.
Negative emotion they experience, they start offloading it to you, which means that their boat isn't sinking. They're taking on some water, but what they're doing is they're taking all the water that their boat is taking on, they're transferring it to you. So you start to sink faster than they sink. So it's like a game of chicken where you have to cave, and you ultimately have to fix this problem. And then the problem is that even when you start to cave and you fix the problem, what have you actually reinforced? You've reinforced that when there's a problem in our relationship, the right way to fix it is to make you feel emotionally worse, right? Because if that person can make you feel emotionally bad and worse and worse and worse and worse until they reach that threshold, then you'll fix it. So this is sort of like, it's kind of like a roommate who like, I'm not going to do the dishes, and you get pissed off about the dishes more than I do, so I never have to do the dishes. All I have to do is wait until you get so pissed off about the dishes that you'll do them on your own. And so this is the frustrating thing about being in a relationship with an emotionally manipulative person is that you're in a relationship, but you're the one who's kind of like doing all the work, right? It's not like a real relationship where it's a partnership with shared problem solving. It's something where no matter, like, if you have a problem, they're going to emotionally let you know. And if they have a problem, but you try to tell them, they're going to flip it back around on you. So literally what you need to do is recognize this transfer of energy,
recognize the
invite
energy,
them to participate, and also
invite
be able
them to
to
participate,
step away and kind of
step away
yourself
and
of
absolve
their
yourself
part.
of their problems.
You can't accept 100% responsibility for fixing the relationship, which is absolutely what happens. You have to accept at most 50% and put the other 50% on them. And if they want to cry about it, that's their choice. You can't make a relationship work for two people.
Yes, it takes two. Oh my God, that is so powerful. Did you guys like that? Recognize. I hope that was helpful. I really do. Because it's just so prevalent these days. To really take a step back, recognize that there is a transfer of energy, invite them to participate, because it's a partnership, not a one-sided friendship or relationship or even a roommate situation, right? You mentioned like the dishes, and you just get so pissed off that you fix the problem, even though it's their dishes that they're supposed to wash on their own, and then they don't. Man, you like, this is really just the classic time when you've got to absolve yourself of their sins or of their insecurities or of their jealousy or of their crying or of their bullshitting. Like, don't fall for it, because if the more that you reinforce someone who's emotionally manipulative, the more they realize it's going to work. And I see this a lot when kids do this to their parents to like get what they want. For example, you know, say someone wants to get like a princess doll, or they want to get a car from their parents, and they'll just be so mean and emotionally manipulative that the parent will then eventually just cave in and just give them a damn car, or like buy them the doll that they want, or get them an apartment that they want. And it's incredibly manipulative, because then the parent feels guilty. They think they did something wrong in their parenting. Why doesn't their kid love them? You know, like, it's just incredibly toxic. And then the cycle continues into adulthood. So most of the time, to recap, the people who are doing this kind of emotional manipulation, they've got some trauma stored within themselves. Because if you really are, you know, in a partnership with them, you have an obligation to them, and you are meeting their needs, right? You're giving them the quality time. You're affirming that you love them, and you are giving them the physical touch, right? You guys are having sex, or you guys are cuddling. There's like oxytocin, there's a bond, and you two are very close. You're also, you know, doing things together, planning date nights together, these acts of service. You're helping them with their chores. You know, you're helping buying the groceries, or even just like giving them something because they did something nice, and so you want to do something nice back. So all of these things, like, if they are really getting their needs met and they're still crying to you or still saying they're having a hard time, well, then you've literally, like, wipe your hands. Like, I encourage you to wipe your hands clean of it. You've done everything. So why are you still feeling guilty about it? Why do you still feel ashamed for their problems? Like, please don't. It gets me. It's so frustrating. Like, I feel so frustrated for people who are in those kinds of situations, for friends and family members who are in those situations, and they don't know how to get out of it. They're not asking for help. So it really actually takes a lot of courage and bravery to step out of those patterns and just ask for help, ask to do it together, because you guys are in a partnership, or like break up. Like, that's like, you've got to get some cojones, you know, you've got to like get some balls and do what you don't want to do, but, or I don't know, be in partnership with them for 5 years, and then it becomes even more toxic until it boils over, and then you eventually grow up and leave. That's happened before. But anyways, I hope you guys have found this talk super helpful. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I am going to be recovering for the rest of the weekend, and so I'll post a video. And yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time. What I'm saying is I'll post a video tomorrow, but I won't live stream tomorrow because today is the first day that I finally feel like I am recovering. So, from my cold and my cough and my whatever is going on. So yeah, thank you so much, and I will see you guys next time. Peace and love.